Okay. All right, good morning, everyone. And I just want to say a big welcome here to today's Higher Ed on the Hill webinar. This is a webinar that I think we could officially call an installment that we do annually for College for TN. We here at College for TN and THEC, TSAC are hosting this webinar to talk a little bit about legislation from this year that affects higher education. So if we have not met, my name is Sara Byrd. Since the last webinar I was on, I got married, so you may see a name change there. Used to be Sara Marrero, and now I'm Sara Byrd. So it's really nice to see everyone. And I am the coordinator of College Access Communications here at THEC, and I'm really glad that everyone's joined us. So what we're going to do today is we're going to take a look back on this year's legislative session, and like I said, just the different ways that legislation this year impacts higher education across our state. So we have always, with all of our webinars, we have lots of different people from different areas of education joining us. So whether you are K-12, you're coming from a college or university, a community supporting Tennessee students, whether you're a college access professional, we just want to say thank you for being here, and we're really glad to have you. So today what we're going to do is we're just going to try and give a clear and concise overview of all the legislation that was passed this year that might affect our students, maybe affect some of our institutions, programs, scholarship programs, things like that across our state. So I have the pleasure of being joined today by two colleagues who have some insight into both the higher education policy and then state legislation. So we are joined today by Tim Phelps. Hello, Tim. Tim is the Senior Director for Grants and Scholarships at THEC, and he leads the division that is responsible for administering Tennessee state financial aid programs. So things like the Hope Scholarship, Tennessee Promise, anything that you're thinking of that's a Tennessee state funded financial aid. Tim's our expert, right, Tim? So whenever you go onto College for TN, if you go over to the resources tab and you go to, or the financial aid tab, and you click on Tennessee financial aid, any of those financial aid programs is, it would be Tim's expertise. So he's going to bring us some student-centered information and ways to understand this new legislation. And then we also have Colleen Ellis. Welcome, Colleen. And Colleen is the Director for State Government Relations, and she serves as THEC's liaison to the Tennessee General Assembly and helps to track legislation that's relevant to higher education in Tennessee. So she'll share with us some insights about the session's key priorities, what they mean for our students, how they affect the work that we're doing. So hopefully all that information was correct. You guys can correct me if I said anything that wasn't right about your jobs, but I am going to go ahead and share my screen because I've got a little PowerPoint presentation for us, and we will go ahead and get started here. So who would like to start? Tim, are you going to start here for us with financial aid and the lottery?
Yes, I'll go ahead and get started, and
Perfect.
Like I mentioned earlier, I'll go ahead and start, and then Colleen can correct me where I'm wrong, which could very likely happen. But thanks, Sara. Good morning. Thanks to everyone who's joined us. We appreciate you guys taking time to hear about financial aid and TSAC legislation. I'm going to dive right in, and you can see on the first bullet there says lottery versus sports wagering landscape. And so I'm sure most, if not all of you, are familiar with the Education Freedom Scholarship Act, which is also known as the voucher bill, which provides scholarships for students to attend private schools. And I'm not going to get into the specifics of that bill, but the main reason I mention it is for the impact that it has on lottery-funded programs. So I'm going to cover a little bit of background, so bear with me while I do this, but you all probably know lottery programs are paid for with net lottery proceeds, and also a source that you may not be familiar with is sports wagering or a tax on sports wagering. And so the net lottery proceeds, those are monies that are left over after the lottery corporation sells their tickets, they pay their bills, and then they transfer those funds to the state. And starting in 2019, we started receiving sports wagering, the tax from that other source. And the first year for the sports wagering funds, we received about 20 million. But because of the popularity of sports wagering, we received around $70 million last year. It's on track to be close to 80 million this year. And so currently, the way the law is written, any excess funds after lottery programs, those are being routed to Tennessee Promise. But late last year, the state treasurer said, hey, Tennessee Promise is self sufficient, which means it can pay for itself with interest earned from an endowment that it has. And that endowment has been started when the program began in 2014, 2015. And that endowment is up to about 1.2 billion. So we've been in a posture where we've had funds, plenty of funds or funds, excess funds available. So late last year, we started looking at what can we do with some of and make some changes to our lottery funded programs to help students and reasonably spend some of those excess funds. And we had some ideas like increasing the GAM supplemental award, which is the merit supplement to the Hope Scholarship, raising the Hope with Aspire income cutoff, which is also a supplement. You guys probably know that amount. That cutoff is $36,000 at this point. It's never been changed, and so we were looking at what can we do and how high can we raise that. Another idea, and you can see that at the bottom of that slide, but it was initially called Tennessee Works, but it would have made TCAT's tuition and fee free for all students. And then also some other changes. I'll mention one more, which was near and dear to me, but we were going to allow students to change enrollment. Essentially, if a student went from full-time to part-time, we would allow them to do that with no need for an appeal. Currently, if a student does that and there's not an extent and there is a reason they do that, they can appeal and potentially retain their Hope Scholarship, but in some cases they lose that. So lo and behold, the bill which introduces the education scholarships gets introduced, and in the original version, all of that sports wagering money that we were looking at gets redirected for another purpose. And so when we find this out, we start doing some math, and we determined that beginning next year, when we would lose the sports wagering money, we would start facing a deficit of about 20 million. So after conversations with our staff, conversations with legislators, which Colleen was a critical piece of those conversations, or a critical part, the bill gets amended with language that says, hey, if there is a deficit in the lottery funded programs, then the sports wagering money is going to be used for that purpose before it gets redirected for any other purposes. So really the big question is, Tim, what does all of this mean? What does all of this mean? This means beginning next year that lottery programs will become reliant essentially on net lottery proceeds to pay the bill. But if there is a deficit in the sports wagering, is a deficit in the funding the lottery programs, then the sports wagering money is going to make up that difference. And ultimately, absent any future legislative changes, the way that the lottery is looking right now, there may be limited funding to make any changes or future changes to lottery funded programs. Looking at where we are right now through the third quarter, and we use a fiscal year, it's similar to our academic year, but the lottery proceeds through March are down about 60 million through those first three quarters compared to the prior year. So we'll have to see how the rest of the year turns out. A lot of this depends on if we have a big jackpot and more people start playing. The higher the jackpot, the more participation, the more tickets we sell. So it's definitely a wait and see at this point. I will say, for any of you who are buying lottery tickets and buying scratch offs, please continue to do that. We need you to do that. if any of you have sports wagering or online betting accounts, we need you to continue to do that, but we also need you to buy lottery tickets and scratch offs. So we're definitely facing potentially facing a deficit in future years, and that's going to be uh, a slippery slope, if you will. And looking at, you can see the second bullet there with the list of the proposed changes that we had for bills. Some of those are changes to smaller programs, and regardless of the amount that it changes, the legislature had essentially no appetite to make changes to any programs, given the fact that we were looking at the deficit that we are. And I'll pause there and let Colleen say anything or add anything to that she wants
Yeah,
to.
that's exactly right. THEC, Lou Hanneman gave a presentation to the Higher Ed Committee at their first meeting and kind of laid out the financial picture of the lottery. We also had a lot of new members on the committee, and so we just kind of gave a lottery refresh on, what programs actually come out of the lottery. And it was through those conversations that I think the committee expressed that regardless of the educational merit of the idea presented, so like, for example, looking at this list, there's a lot of support for that step up scholarship change. And like Tim said, it was only about $200,000 impact on the lottery, or things like expanding dual enrollment to sophomores, or Tennessee Works, which was that kind of refresh of our TCAT scholarships. All of those have very strong support legislature on their education policy merits alone. But they sent a message this year kind of saying, we need to be responsible of our lottery programs. We're very proud of them. It's something that legislators either in their first term or in their 15th term hold a lot of high regard for. If any of you guys work with your any colleagues in other states, you'll understand that we are the first and one of the only to be able to keep a program like this off the ground and financially solvent. So they kind of sent that message that, hey, it doesn't matter the merit of the idea. We're going to press pause while we wait and see. And during the Lottery Corporation's budget presentation to the Senate Education Committee, they did express that they are analyzing and they're expecting to see that the drop in lottery revenues is directly tied to sports wagering. So we are trying to look at, what does this look like long term? Sports wagering definitely isn't going away. And also, we're always preparing for Alabama. That's where most of our, I don't want to say most, that's where a lot of our players come from. And they do not have a statewide lottery, so they cross the border to play our games. And their legislature over the past few years has been trying to pass a lottery, not with any success. So that's something we're monitoring too, and getting ready to address any changes that come that way. So we're really dedicated to kind of protecting our hallmark programs. And while we're always looking to innovate, we're maybe taking that cautious approach to make sure there's not too much change to the landscape for students in years to come.
Yes, and I'll add just to be perfectly clear, and it says it there, but all of these bills have been pushed to 2026. So essentially meaning they did not pass this year, but there will be reconsideration next year for these pieces of legislation. And obviously looking ahead to 2026, that will also be determined based on the Lottery Corporation rebounding and net lottery proceeds rebounding. This could be a one year blip, if you will, because the Lottery Corporation has been phenomenal in the amount of funding that they have raised and the amount they've contributed to the state for all of these programs. And so I probably don't give them enough praise for all that they do. But with that in mind, it would need to be probably a consistent pattern of rebound. Essentially, if it's a down 1 year, up 1 year, down 1 year, then the legislature is still probably going to maintain a conservative posture and say we need to see some consistency. And so I think while these, like we said, all of these are good ideas, but we essentially, the state, need to take a look and see, is this are we at a point where we can make changes and absorb that? Having the fallback with the sports wagering money and using that is a big help. But really, that just keeps us even. It doesn't allow us any additional funds to make changes to any programs. So,
This
and we'll
is
move.
really interesting stuff. Yeah.
Yeah,
It's
and
it's
we'll
really interesting to hear all of the stuff about the lottery and sports wagering. I mean, it just how much it affects our students and our financial programs. It's just really interesting.
Yep.
So
It was
okay,
it
y'all
was
ready
it,
to?
Yeah,
Oh, sorry,
and I
Tim.
was going to add, no, sorry, I was going to add, it was a little bit of a gut punch when we saw that
Sure.
the funding was totally removed, and I think we had an assumption based on some conversations that we were going to at least hold on to a percentage of that. But then, like I
Sure.
said, when the bill was introduced, it completely removed it from lottery funding. Then Colleen's work, Lou's work, we were able to at least get part of that back into the mix. So we at least have that fallback to help fund any deficit that we might have.
Okay, good to know. Thank you for sharing that.
Yes.
Okay, so TSAA.
Yep. So TSAA is our state need-based grant, and it is essentially currently has a budget of about $113 million. And so I'm very excited about this program. And just given the fact that I have been with THEC TSAC for almost 19 years now. And when I started here, our budget for the TSA program was around 40 to 50 million, somewhere in there. So over that time frame, we've been able to request and receive improvements to the program, and we requested a $12 million improvement this year. Last year, we actually requested based on the change from EFC to SAI, the expected family contribution to the student aid index, we estimated that we were going to experience about a 30% increase in recipients. So in response to that, for the current year, actually, we requested a $36 million improvement, which was denied. And so we were disappointed when that happened. And what we did is we turned around in the current year and submitted an improvement for next year for 25-26 and said, hey, instead of getting the full 36 million, let's piece that out and let's ask for a $12 million improvement, which was included in the governor's budget, which is very exciting. That's going to put our annual budget at about 125 million. And we are also looking at repeating essentially that same $12 million improvement for the next couple of years. So by the time that is all said and done, we're looking at having a budget of about 150 million, almost 150 million for the TSA program. And like I said, that is a phenomenal amount. I'm not sure how that compares to other states, but it is definitely up there. If I had to guess, I would say probably top 5, maybe top 10 in the amount that we allocate for our state need-based grant. There are very few states that have as robust of need-based funding and merit funding. And I think Tennessee, we're always at the top of the list when we're looking at being compared to other states. Next slide.
Okay.
So we mentioned this program last year, and it's a 5-year pilot program, and in the first year of the program, we had very minimal participation, and so the Future Teacher Scholarship, like it says, it's a loan forgiveness program. Currently, it's a loan forgiveness program for juniors and seniors, and literally, I think for the first year we had about $10,000 that we distributed from an appropriation of 900,000. So looking at that minimal participation, a bill was brought forth to help increase that. And you can see there the 3 changes. The bill, Senate Bill 682, House Bill 504, will allow post-baccalaureate students to participate. One thing that I'm in favor of, tremendously in favor of, is that it reduces the teaching commitment currently, which is 4 years, to 2 years. And then it also establishes a flat award amount of $3,500. I think in the original version of the bill, correct me if I'm wrong, Colleen, but the original award amount that was proposed, a flat award amount was $5,000. But then once we did the fiscal note and we reached out to the institutions asking them, okay, if we make these changes, what will your increased participation in this program look like? And so based on that response, it looks like for 25-26, we should spend all of the money that we have, all 900,000. I don't know if that will happen. We have seen an increased participation this year for 24-25, but not enough to really make a huge dent in that $900,000 appropriation. So we're excited about this change and these changes to this program. And we definitely want to spend all of the funding that we have for this. I will say there is, like it says there, it is a 5-year pilot program, which is currently slated to end in the 27-28 academic year. There was a proposal to extend that out. That was not included in the final version. So the way that it stands now, that program will end in 2027-28.
And I think the transition to a flat award amount makes this program more attractive for students as well, because it used to be just up to tuition and fees after all other gift aid was applied. So it would vary greatly from student to student. And now this flat rate allows that if they do have gift aid that causes this $3,500 to go beyond tuition and fees, it can go to the student's cost of attendance. So it can help them purchase books, housing, things of that nature. And so I think that will attract hopefully more students as well. And like Tim said, that 4-year commitment is very daring to an 18-year-old, 19-year-old, 20-year-old. And so that 2-year commitment, I think, makes it a little more palatable for sure.
Yeah. There are other loan forgiveness programs for teachers, and I should say this is essentially the student has to be enrolled in an approved educator preparation program. So, but there are other programs like the federal Teach Grant. There is students aren't allowed, if you will, to participate in both of those programs. So the students have to make a decision: do they want the federal Teach Grant or do they want the Future Teacher Scholarship? Given that, like we said, like you just said, Colleen, the teaching commitment is reduced, this probably may make it a little more attractive to some students. So, next slide, Sarah. Thank you. So this is there was a bill, Senate Bill 644, House Bill 865, which now requires the Board of Nursing to allow TBR institutions to offer dual enrollment programs in pre-practical nursing and practical nursing programs. So that bill begins, or that those programs begin with the 10th grade. The main reason that I wanted to reference this slide is that there is no impact to 10th grade participation in the dual enrollment grant at the 2-year and 4-year institutions. So the section of this bill was for the section of statute that this bill impacted was for the Tennessee Board of Nursing. And so, but there was no change to the statute which governs the dual enrollment grant. Currently, all high school students who are enrolled at TCATs, and obviously some of the TCATs offer those practical nursing programs, they are eligible to receive the dual enrollment grant. But students who participate who are in 10th grade and are participating in a dual enrollment program, if it's at a 2-year, 4-year institution, they are not eligible to participate in the dual enrollment grant. And as we mentioned earlier, just given the fact that there was a bill this year that to expand dual enrollment to high school sophomores, but obviously given the shortfall that we foresee or are forecasting for lottery funded programs and the revenue, then there's probably not going to be much of an appetite to expand sophomore or freshman participation in the dual enrollment grant for the foreseeable future. Again, huge caveat that things could change, lottery revenues could improve, and so on. But at this point, for these students that will be in these pre-practical nursing and practical nursing programs, they will not be eligible to participate in the dual enrollment grant.
And this was brought by an East Tennessee sponsors, because their health organization out there, Ballad Health, they're looking to address the nursing shortage. So they wanted this, but this is permissive for our TCAT. So this does not suddenly create these LPN programs. This just allows them to do so under the Board of Nursing's purview to be recognized for licensure. So like Tim said, not as big of a change as it seems, but something we wanted to put on your guys' radar. So THEC as an agency brought 2 legislative initiatives to the legislature this year, one really modernizing THEC's responsibilities and one dealing with TSAC as an entity. So the THEC bill does a lot of things, but 2 things I wanted to highlight for this group is one, THEC is a body created by the legislature for the legislature. Our charge and statute is to carry out the goals of the legislature in the higher education space. And so we found it really important to add access initiatives and career readiness outreach to our statutory charges. It's obviously something that THEC has been doing for a long time, but adding it to our statutory charges really helps in future conversations, especially surrounding budgetary asks, and just allows us to codify the work we've been doing and protect it in the future. Our outreach work is something that the legislature is very excited about, such as Advise TN, things of that nature, something they've supported for a long time. So just putting it in this in statute just solidifies our place in that arena. And then it also clarifies the definition of quality non-degree credential, QNDCs. This is something that THEC worked with a lot of stakeholders on 2 years ago to put in statute. It's something that kind of the higher ed landscape around the country is looking at how we can codify these credentials that allow students to skill up without the traditional commitment of like a 2-year or a 4-year degree. And so we're doing this to maybe look at how we could offer aid to these programs in the distant future, not at this moment, but just kind of codifying that definition of those category of options. Also, we had the TSAC bill, which merged TSAC under the THEC board. We currently had 2 governing boards. Now we will have 1, which we think is really important. As you know, as you can already tell from this presentation, we've had a lot. Sorry, I'm going to move. We've had a lot of legislation that impacts financial aid, and we want our board to be up to speed on that. So just looking at, all financial aid decisions and higher ed policy decisions are no longer 2 separate entities. So we just wanted to combine kind of that.
Yeah. And I'll add, Colleen, just from, and I've mentioned this in other venues, but essentially, yes, TSAC becomes a division of THEC, but this has no impact on the administration of our state financial aid programs. So you will see no difference in anything that the day-to-day functions of Hope, Tennessee Promise, all of our other programs. It's going to be transparent to everyone. So I just wanted to make that clear for anybody who may have that question.
Do you mind taking the slide? Sorry.
Oh, you need me to take that, Colleen?
Yeah, I think Colleen has to step away for just a minute, Tim.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so other higher education initiatives. So essentially a expansion of the Summer Institute for Tennessee Achieves, like it says there, about $500,000. I don't know how much I'll be able to speak to this, but the Summer Institute essentially helping those students get a head start on their initial enrollment before the fall term, and then also the excuse me, the TSU access to funds. I think and Colleen can correct me when she comes back, but the TSU, you guys may be aware, but there has been some financial difficulties, for lack of a better way to say it, in TSU being able to administer the funds they receive for students, for financial aid, for other uses. And so they have requested access, early access, I think is probably the best way to say it, to keep their campus afloat. And so they have essentially requested that and are putting in place a plan to fully fund, and it's not going to be a quick turnaround, but fully fund their campus moving forward and put a plan in place that says, hey, here are the changes we are making. And you all have probably seen in the news that they have let a large number of staff go, making changes within the campus, things like that. And I'll turn it back over to Colleen to let her further expand on that. So
sorry about that, Tim. Yeah, that's exactly
no problem.
right. They had a huge allocation of capital funds for building improvements, things of that nature, that have been left unencumbered. And due to their current, fiscal status, the legislature wanted to give them the opportunity to use that for operational dollars, so they can continue to operate in their current capacity, pay their staff, things of that nature. There is, like Tim said, those access drawdowns kind of criteria that the commissioner and FNA will come up with advice from us as well, THEC, as well as the comptroller, just to look at, what financial benchmarks do they need to meet to continue to draw down these funds. There is a large appetite for from the legislature to support TSU as a land-grant institution, as our state's flagship HBCU. They really want to see it succeed, and we've seen great strides taken by the new president and the new board to help with that. And so they just requested to be able to use, these funds already allocated for operational purposes. And so once this bill is signed into law, which it hasn't been signed yet, but it will be soon, they can start that process as they continue to kind of right size the institution.
Good to know. Just a little expansion about the Tennessee Chiefs Summer Institute. It specifically, I'm sure that a lot of our people who are on our webinar today are familiar with it, but it specifically targets students, like Tennessee Promise students, who might need some academic help as they transition from high school to college. So it's basically designed to kind of jumpstart their academics so that those students don't have to start in remedial courses when they're in college. And it's a really highly successful program. So we see a lot of the students who go through Summer Institute do not end up having to go into those remedial courses, reading courses, writing courses, math courses, whenever they do get to college. And so, yeah, so this expansion, I guess, would just, it would probably increase the impact of those Summer Institute programs, probably increase the number of students that we can serve that way, which is, it's a pretty big deal for those students. So.
Yeah, and right now it's, these institutes are offered in 6 different community colleges across the state, and this money will go to expanding that footprint to allowing it at more community colleges. And yeah, it's huge for both our institutions, are getting students more prepared, and then students feel a little more confident going into the fall, having already either increase their reading, math, and English skills, or just getting used to a college setting. They're on a college campus, they have a professor, they're in that kind of academic environment, and it helps students who maybe are first gen or don't have really any guidance or experience in the college landscape kind of get their footing before they head onto campus, and so they can be their most successful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I could foresee that being one thing that, especially with our participants on our call today who are college access professionals, that might be something that could really impact your students, is just seeing the expansion of those programs being more readily available, and really, it can really catch those students who are kind of at risk of maybe not following through with college, or not carrying over year after year, kind of struggling once they first get into college. It can really help them with some feeling like they're taking ownership of their education and just some pretty strong self-efficacy. And so I have a feeling that could really directly impact a lot of the work that our folks on our call do who are with us today. So I think that'll be some good stuff.
And thank you all for picking up the slack on my description.
Oh,
of that.
no,
so I
no,
appreciate
no,
that.
Tim. We're all working here together. So so we have Tim and Colleen's contact information here. So, if anyone, I guess, has burning questions, we would love to go ahead and answer them now, or you're always welcome to reach out to Tim and Colleen directly if you have some of those questions. So, okay. Yes, Colleen, go for it.
I see Doug ask a question in the chat, and I know you asked this on our lottery slide when some of the lottery bills that were pushed off. It says, what was the discussion for funding for specific private institutions? And so one of the things he saw on there was allowing, I believe, promise dollars to go to private barber and cosmetology schools. The impetus for that was due to the wait lists in those programs in some areas. But there was not a large appetite for that. I think it will have an uphill battle even next year at the legislature, just for the concept. I mean, we've put a lot of money into our THECs for expanding their footprint in the state. And there's just such a variance of both quality and just cost in the private space of cosmetology programs that I don't think there would be a huge appetite for that. Also, there was something in there about allowing schools that are candidates for accreditation to be able to become HOPE eligible. As you guys know, our HOPE eligible institutions are both public and private universities in the state, but they do have to be accredited institutions, and that accrediting process can be a multi-year process. And so I think a member was just hoping it was actually for Williamson College in Williamson County to get that access. I think that is also something the legislature is looking at with caution, just because we don't know, while that was brought for that one school, how many schools that would encompass. And the accreditation process is rigorous for a reason. And the last thing we want is for an institution for any reason to not become accredited, and then those students lose that eligibility, and then they're stuck wondering, do I need to transfer to continue receiving aid, or things of that nature. So definitely looking at those, I think, well-intentioned steps for maybe expanding eligibility with some, realistic caution of making sure that student continuity isn't disrupted. All right.
Good to you. Yeah, I didn't see a ton of questions here. I just was wondering, just with some of those, I think that where we would anticipate most questions or most concerns from our people would be about the lottery funding that you spoke about, Tim, with sports wagerings and things like that. But I did feel reassured from you that, like Tennessee Promise, we did hear you say, like, it is self-sufficient, and obviously it still has a lot of support and things like that. So I don't know. I just want to make sure our people feel like they don't have much to worry about in terms of their students being taken care of, even though there could be some financial changes there.
Yep. I think lottery funded programs will always be made whole, essentially. So I don't think there's any reason for concern as far as having to reduce awards. There is language in the statute which says that if there is a shortfall, and TSAC has the ability to reduce awards pro rata, but in another section of statute, it also says that you can dip into a lottery reserve that we have, and that lottery reserve is about 110 million. But if we dip into that, then we do repay that from the lottery transfers that we receive. So I think we have enough leeway, if you will, and enough emergency funding or emergency funds to essentially say, hey, we've got a $20 million deficit this year. We've got sports wagering, we've got a lottery reserve. So I think we have enough resources to always make sure that students get the awards they deserve.
That's right. And I think support on the legislative side has only grown since the passage of the lottery. So if we came to the legislature and said, hey, we are in this deficit, we need creative solutions, I think they'd be willing and ready to swiftly come to the table and figure something out with us. It's not something that, it's not lost importance on them at all. I think it's only grown with the cost of college growing and the conversation naturally surrounding student loans and things of that nature. And so I'm confident that if we do get to a place where we have to really examine our current programs, that the legislature would come to the table to make sure that our current programs are able to exist in perpetuity.
Good to know. Very, very good to know. Well, I always love to hear support for our lottery programs. I was a Hope Scholarship student myself, and so it always makes me so proud to be a Tennessean. I don't play the lottery often, but Tim, you really encouraged me there. I might have to go and buy another lottery ticket, but every once in a while I'll go and I'll buy a lottery ticket, and I think of I'm just helping support all of these students and their college dreams. It's really a very altruistic thing, right, to do, is to play the lottery. So okay, well, I don't see any more questions in our chat, so we're wrapping up a little bit early, but do you guys have any other closing thoughts, anything else that you wanted to share with our participants before we break for the day?
I think I'm good.
Me too.
Okay,
yeah,
sweet.
you have
they
our
left
contact
it
info
all on the table.
slides.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, and
questions.
Yeah, thanks for having us, Sarah. Appreciate the opportunity to talk about the legislation, and happy to, like I said, if anybody has questions or wants to give us a call, they've got our contact info. So
awesome. Well, thank you guys so much. We really, really appreciate it. And I'll post, like I put in the chat, we'll post this webinar online and we'll post the slides as well. So thanks everybody for joining us today. And we hope you have the best weekend. So we'll see you soon on our next webinar for TN.